Hello and welcome to the Bronx Movie Club. This week we got the upcoming movie releases for this and next weekend. I have movie reviews for Toy Story 4 that was released in theaters last week, and yesterday, which comes out this weekend. And I finally saw Ferris Bueller's Day Off in time for the movie's 33rd anniversary that was back on June 11th. So let's do this. For the June 28th releases, we have Yesterday, starring Himesh Patel, who is in different British TV shows such as Damned, The EastEnders, which is my mom's favorite show, Luminaries, which is upcoming TV show, and The Aeronauts, which is a movie coming up in October of this year. The movie also stars Lily James, who played in Little Woods, Sorry to Bother You, and is going to play Mrs. De Winter in the upcoming remake of Rebecca, which is a 1940s film directed by Alfred Hitchcock. She was also in Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again last year, where she played young Donna. The movie is directed by Danny Boyle, who is also known for the director as Slumdog Millionaire, Trainspotting 1 and 2, 28 Days Later, and its sequel 28 Weeks Later, as well as the Steve Jobs biopic. Richard Curtis wrote this movie. He's best known for War Horse. He wrote Four Weddings and a Funeral, Bridget Jones's Diary, and the sequel, and Notting Hill, and a whole bunch of other British stuff. If you're British, you know who these people are. Jack Malik is a British musician who wants to make it big and be known for his music. Unfortunately, only him and his manager and best friend Ellie seem to really think his music is any good. After a worldwide power blackout, Jack wakes up in a world where the Beatles never existed. He goes on to perform all the Beatles songs he can remember and becomes an international superstar in the process. I got the opportunity to see this film last week, so stick around and check out my review later in the episode. Annabelle Comes Home is the third film in the Annabelle franchise, which is itself a part of the Conjuring cinematic universe, which also includes The Nun. The movie stars Vera Farmiga from Godzilla King of the Monsters and When They See Us, and Patrick Wilson from Aquaman. These two play Lorraine and Ed Warren. McKenna Grace, who was also in Captain Marvel, plays their daughter Judy. The film is directed by Gary Dauberman and co-written by James Wan. This is Dauberman's directorial debut, but he has a long list of writing credits. He wrote the other two Annabelle movies, he wrote It Chapters 1 and 2, he wrote The Nun, and he created the Swamp Thing TV series. So he's been doing a lot of work. In this movie, Ed and Lorraine Warren seek to keep Annabelle from doing any more harm. To do this, they keep the doll in a sacred glass case, which has been blessed by a priest, which is supposed to prevent the evil doll from escaping. But Annabelle still manages to awaken anyway, and the evil it contains awakens all the other evil spirits in the room, and they all have their sights set on the Warren's young daughter. This is the second movie this summer that stars Vera Farmiga as a woman who puts her daughter in danger of being destroyed by a monster. Let's see if this one is able to draw in bigger audiences than the other.
It's not good for anyone to go in there. My dad says that everything in there is either haunted, cursed, or used in some ritualistic practice.
What's that?
The ferryman. They put coins over the eyes of the dead so he could take their souls.
What about the doll that's in there?
Annabelle, she's in a case for a reason.
The Other Side of Heaven Part 2, Fire of Faith, is a sequel of the 2001 faith-based film about a missionary who travels to the Congo and all the hardship he goes through at the time. In this movie, the missionary, John H. Groberg, returns to the Congo in the 1960s with his wife and his 5 daughters. Their faith is tested when their 6th child is born with a serious illness. The film stars Christopher Gorham as missionary John Groberg and Natalie Medlock as the wife Jean. Like the first film, this movie was written and directed by Mitch Davis, who has also written and directed films like The Stray and Christmas Eve.
I will build your chapels, Kolipoki, and you will fill them.
I'm having a baby.
Holy cow! Get out of the way! Move it, girl. That's it. That's it.
On June 28th, there will also be a new cut of The Avengers Endgame that will replace the film that is currently playing in theaters right now. The movie will be the exact same as the one we have seen since it was released in April, but this time around, the film will include a deleted scene from the film as a post-credit scene. I don't know what the deleted scene is, but I can guess it'll probably be a deleted scene that was described not too long ago by the directors between Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow and Mark Ruffalo's The Hulk. Who knows? We'll find out soon. Now, for the movies that are being released for the week of July 4th, we have Spider-Man: Far From Home. Once again, this movie stars Tom Holland as Spider-Man. It'll also star Sam Jackson as Nick Fury, Zendaya as MJ, and Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio. This is going to be the last movie of the MCU's Phase 3. It takes place not long after the events of Endgame, which apparently has opened up a multiverse where the Elementals are able to sneak through and wreak havoc on Peter Parker's European school trip. He teams up with Mysterio to fight them off after being recruited by Nick Fury and made to reluctantly put the spider costume back on. The hype around this movie is nowhere near the hype of the last MCU movie that came out a couple of months ago. I still expect this movie to make a lot of money in the box office, especially after such a lackluster summer so far. Spider-Man: Far From Home will be released in theaters July 2nd.
You're a very difficult person to contact, Spider-Man. This is Mr. Beck.
We could have used someone like you on my world.
Your world? Beck is from Earth, just not ours. The snap tore a hole in our dimension.
You're saying there's a multiverse?
We have a job to do, and you're coming with us.
Midsommar is Ari Aster's follow-up to last year's horror hit, Hereditary. It stars Florence Pugh and Jake Rayner as an American couple who attend a Swedish midsummer festival with friends after they experience a death in the family. The trip turns into a nightmare complete with hallucinations, pagan cults, and other creepy and unnerving stuff. Midsommar will be released in theaters on July 3rd.
I don't know why you invited us.
That's why you look so guilty right now, because you know.
We only do this every 90 years. I was most excited for you to come.
In a year full of superheroes and mutants and other big blockbuster sci-fi action films, there has been a film in that same genre that has been totally forgotten by theaters and audiences. I'm talking about Fast Color, the film starring Gugu Mbatha Raw, Lorraine Toussaint, and Sania Sidney. The movie's about a young woman played by Mbatha Raw who is forced to go on the run after her superhuman powers are discovered. She runs to the only place left that she can run to, back home to her daughter and her mother, who she has abandoned years before. While she's here, she finds out that her daughter may be more powerful than her. Despite having to do with superpowers and other sci-fi elements, it is a story about the strained relationship among 3 generations of Black women. For some reason, Hollywood still thinks that this kind of story is too hard to sell to a mass audience. So the film was eventually released a week before Avengers Endgame in only 25 theaters, including only 2 theaters in New York City, and allowed to die a quick death after only 4 weeks in theaters, despite a high Rotten Tomatoes critic rating and a high audience rating. But now it's finally being released to streaming and Blu-ray. The film can already be seen on streaming as we speak, and will be available to buy on DVD and Blu-ray on July 16th.
Lila's different. She can see the colors.
What do they look like? I've never seen them.
It's like an echo. Moving over everything fast like a race.
It's gotten harder for us to stay in hiding.
Tonight I'm going to review a movie about living beings beholden to their owners. Beings who define themselves so closely to whether or not they have a child that they go through a true existential crisis when they do not have one. Of course, I'm talking about Toy Story 4. This movie stars a whole bunch of stars who are returning to their old roles or playing entirely new toys. Tom Hanks plays Woody, Tim Allen is back as Buzz Lightyear, Annie Potts is Bo Peep, Christina Hendricks as Gabby Gabby, Key and Peele as Ducky and Bunny, Keanu Reeves, the man himself, plays Duke Kaboom, Ally Mackey is Giggles McDimples, and Tony Hale is Forky. The film takes place not long after Toy Story 3, where Woody and the gang is given to a young girl in the neighborhood named Bonnie, right before Andy drives off to college. Now, Bonnie is on her way to start kindergarten. For some reason, she has an orientation a week before school actually starts. I don't remember ever having to do orientation for when I was in kindergarten, and as far as I know, my 5-year-old niece has never done that either, so maybe it's just a Pixar thing. I'm guessing it's a lot like orientation in college, where the administration sits you down in a room and tells you not to plagiarize papers or like assault fellow classmates, but luckily, that's not what happens in the movie. Bonnie is asked to make arts and crafts project for the school and to get used to the classroom setting. This is where Bonnie, with the help from Woody, creates her new friend Forky, a spork with googly eyes, pipe cleaners for arms, and a broken tongue depressor for feet, which is stuck together with putty. The girl loves Forky very much, and Woody takes it upon himself to keep her and Forky together, despite the fact that Forky desperately does not want to be a toy. Much like Buzz in Toy Story Part 1, Forky believes his life's purpose is something completely different and more noble than being simply a child's plaything. Toy Story Part 3 begins with Woody lamenting over the loss of Bo Peep. The circumstances of her disappearance are not discussed, and her name has never been mentioned again throughout the movie. Toy Story 4, however, begins with a flashback from before Part 3, where we learn what happened to Bo Peep and what kind of impact that had on Woody, which drives him to do some of the things that he actually does in Part 4. His motivations to find Bo Peep again begin to run counter to his motivations to return Forky to Bonnie again. His search for his own happiness with Bo competes with his hardwired need to make a child happy. This leads to the big adventure of the film, where he tries to return Forky to his child by rescuing him from an antique shop, while at the same time trying to reunite with Bo Peep. Without getting into any spoiler territory or giving too much of the plot away, this movie deals with the themes of abandonment, redemption, disability, freedom, and the things that we owe ourselves and to our loved ones. This is all told through these toys. This is some pretty heavy stuff for a children's film. But despite these deep concepts, the movie is still very fun. It really is the funniest of the Toy Story films. Just like the earlier reviews have said about the film, it is the funniest of the series. Key and Peele play 2 carnival plush toys, Ducky and Bunny, who are attached at the hand and are hilarious. Keanu Reeves plays a Canadian toy version of a motorcycle stuntman named Duke Kaboom, and he is constantly haunted by the abandonment of his first and last owner, and is always seeking to redeem himself from his past failure as a toy. This may sound like a hot take, but Woody plays kind of a reverse white male version of Harriet Tubman in this movie. And in all the movies, all the Toy Story movies really. Instead of risking his life to free his fellow beings from being owned like Tubman did, Woody constantly is risking his life and livelihood to ensure that toys have owners. Most of the toys in this franchise define themselves on whether or not they have children. If they are not owned, they are considered lost. Some of the lost toys in this movie have banded together in a playground to make sure that they are always played with by children, because that is what they define themselves as. Even the bad guy of this film lives by these same motivations as the rest of the toys. Gabby Gabby goes through such extremes in this movie because she seeks to finally have a child herself, something that she has never experienced before despite being created back in the 1950s. This is because she was made with a defect in her voice box. During the voice acting part of the production of this film, there's a story where Tim Allen calls up Tom Hanks and asked him if he has done the lines for the ending of the film yet. Hanks said no, and Allen warned him that the ending would be very, very emotional. And he wasn't lying. I couldn't help getting a little misty-eyed myself watching the end of this movie, and my girlfriend was full-on crying. So were other members of the audience. So I will extend this warning to you in case you haven't seen this film yet. And if you haven't seen this movie yet, I don't know what you're up to. You need to go leave right now, watch the movie, and then you can come back and finish watching this show on YouTube or something, because I'm not going anywhere. I'll be on YouTube. Just watch the movie. This movie gets 4 stars from me. You definitely have to watch it. As much as I love movies, there are a ton of movies that I have never seen that I feel everyone else on the planet has already seen. All the time people tell me, you haven't seen The Lion King? You haven't seen Top Gun? You haven't seen The Goonies? Or whatever other classic movie that I never bothered to watch when they came to theaters. A couple of weeks ago, I decided that I'm going to change all that. I'm going to finally watch all those movies and talk about them on this show. I started binge watching Toy Story trilogy last week, which was the last episode. This week, for its 33rd anniversary, I finally saw Ferris Bueller's Day Off. This movie stars Matthew Broderick as Ferris Bueller, Alan Ruck as Cameron Fry, and Mia Sara as Sloane Peterson. This movie has been written and directed by John Hughes, who's also known for directing classic 80s comedies like The Breakfast Club, Weird Science, 16 Candles, which is celebrating its 35th anniversary this year, She's Having a Baby, and Uncle Buck. He's also been writing movies like Home Alone, the National Lampoon's Vacation movies of the 80s, and Pretty in Pink. Basically, when we think of an iconic 80s comedy or a teen dramedy, we're thinking of a John Hughes movie. With that being said, this movie is about a high school kid who cooks up an elaborate excuse to get a day off from school. He spends that day with his best friend and his girlfriend, driving around and enjoying the sights of Chicago. He has a jealous sister, played by Jennifer Grey, who's probably best known as being a baby in Dirty Dancing, who hates him because he gets away with all his BS. A high school principal who is willing to go way too far to prove that Ferris is lying about being too sick to come to school. The plot is as simple as that. Ferris has a bunch of gadgets and gimmicks to prevent people from finding out he's not really sick. A mannequin in his bed, snoring coming from his stereo speakers, a recorded message from behind the door in case someone rings the doorbell. The entire movie is about these kids having a good time and getting back before anyone finds out they were gone. Everyone in this movie is rich and spoiled in some way or another. Ferris would totally be the stereotypical bad guy in another movie of that same time. He's a manipulative rich kid who can get away with everything he does. The kid with a face you just want to punch just to get him to shut up. But in this movie, he's also the hero. The movie is named after him. All the students of his school love him. The people of the suburb they live in love him. And it's the running joke of the entire movie about how everyone knows him and hopes he gets well soon. But he's not the protagonist of this movie. He can't be. The protagonist of a story is the one who has to make a change at some point because of the actions of the antagonist. Ferris's character doesn't change at all in the course of this movie. He is the same kid at the end as he was in the beginning. The same with his girlfriend Sloane. The protagonist of this movie is Cameron. He's manipulated by Ferris into taking his father's most prized possession, his Ferrari, for a joyride throughout the city, despite the fact that he knows that he will be in a ton of trouble for doing it. Cameron has daddy issues, which makes him hate and fear his father, as well as seek his love at the same time. When eventually the car gets jacked up, Cameron is forced to face his issues with his dad, even though that all takes place after the movie is already over. Cameron is the only one who really changes himself through the movie. Everyone has been trying to tell me for years how great this movie is and how funny it is and how they are so surprised that I'd never seen it because it was so good. I thought it was okay. It's not a bad movie. It's funny, but definitely not one of Hughes's best. I found myself hating Ferris and wanting someone to kick him in the butt at some point in the movie. The most entertaining scene in this movie is, to me anyway, involved Charlie Sheen. If they were to make a sequel of this movie, Ferris would be some sort of sleazy politician. The first words he says to a non-white person in this movie is literally,
"You speak English?"
It's a bunch of rich white kids doing rich white kid stuff. I give it 3 stars.
I said it before and I'll say it again. Life moves pretty fast. You don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.
What if you lived in a world where no one has ever heard of the best pop band in the world? Would you exploit that fact to get famous? Jack Malik, a hard-working but unsuccessful musician, gets into a car accident during a weird blackout that happens worldwide. He wakes up in the hospital in a world where the Beatles, among other things, have never existed. He sings the song Yesterday to his friends who think that he wrote the song himself. A Google search only brings up information on the bug. All of Jack's Beatles albums in his record collection have disappeared. So what does Jack do? What Jack does is start performing as many Beatles songs as he can that he can remember at the small-time bars and events that he has been playing his songs at until he finally gets noticed and becomes a world-famous rock star. He's considered a songwriting genius. Jack goes through it all with the fear that he will be found out as a fraud and a thief, despite the fact that no one knows what these songs came from and no one else is around who actually call him on it or sue him for it. This movie is part drama, part romantic comedy, and part regular comedy. The comedic parts work very well. The drama works well also. It's the romantic comedy part that doesn't work. Lily James plays Ellie Appleton, his best friend and manager, when she isn't working her day job as a teacher. We see through flashbacks that Ellie has loved Jack since playing at the Battle of the Bands concert back in grade school, but Jack is either too stupid or too disinterested to notice. The movie feels like it has to make sure that these two people get together, but Jack doesn't seem to be interested in Ellie at all, romantically at all, until he finds out that she tells him that she's always loved him, but is currently dating someone else. It's almost as if he only wants her because she found somebody else. That's not very romantic at all. Sure, he does some hokey romantic monologue at the end of the movie, but almost every romantic comedy that has ever been made has a scene exactly like it. It's not original, it's forced, and it didn't have to be in this movie. Why couldn't they just be friends throughout the entire movie? Other than that, I enjoyed this movie. Kate McKinnon plays Deborah Hammer, who is Jack's new manager. She's like a crass LA stereotype and is the funniest part of this movie. Every time she's on screen, she gets a laugh from the audience. Fans of her will not be disappointed in her work. Beatles fans will enjoy this movie as well. Jack performs all their hits, and there's even a certain cameo at the end that is a little bit heavy-handed, but at the same time was a nice touch to the film. Watch it for the clever premise, the music, and the comedy. The love story of the film, not so much. I give it 3.5 stars. You just saw a segment of the Bronx Movie Club hosted by me, Justin McCullough. If you like what you see, please do not hesitate. Click on the subscribe button down below, click on the little bell up there, and click the like button because you obviously like the program. You can see other segments of my show, which I have in my video section. I have the most anticipated movies of 2019. I have some reviews that you would like to watch, things of that nature. And you can also catch me on social media. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, Stardust, Letterboxd, you name it, I'm there. So, yeah, I'll see you soon.